hear that, right? I think, it's very natural for us to want to, and so we're going back to the kind of the emotional needs, which I think is really awesome. A lot of us really want to kind of support each other by offering solutions and that kind of thing, but you're right, like a lot of the time it's just about being there, validating, providing an understanding, listening ear, and letting them be. This can be really hard if you don't agree with what they're saying, right? If what they're saying is kind of intense or rough and you're like, it's not necessarily true that you're doomed or that life is over, but this is what they're feeling, right? So we don't have to provide solutions. We don't have to fix it. We can just love them and support this. You're feeling really hopeless right now. I can't imagine, how hard it's been for you, that kind of thing. So what else? What else do you guys, how do you respond when someone is in a crisis? So I think we're being too vague. So let's get a little bit kind of more specific. Is anyone willing to share with us any examples? We don't have to use any people here, maybe people that others here wouldn't know. Any examples of friends or people in their life who've had a crisis, gone through a hard time? Let's bring personal things if you're willing. And if you're not, I'll start. And then hopefully we can remember that I'm not a television, and that this is like a give and take. Cool? All right. So an example, as some of you may know, it's been 5.5 years now. My wife was diagnosed with cancer. And she was diagnosed with cancer of unknown origin, and she was given a really, really poor prognosis. Really scary time, really overwhelming, and I'm trying not to get too emotional. But yeah, it was a really hard time for our family. My son at the time was 2 years old, and so, I can only share there was such a varied amount of responses of the people in our lives of how they supported me and my wife and my son in the crisis. And when I look back, I think the ones that stick out, the way I felt the most love, and I felt like God's presence through these people, were the people that were persistent in their love and in their care. So I think that why that mattered is because there were a lot of people in the first week or two of hearing it. They all came out of the woodwork, and it was a lot of love and support, and I got you, and I care about you. But then the thing about these kinds of crises is they're almost never a one and done, right? I was suffering for a long time. My wife, Helena, was in and out of the hospital. I was trying to figure out how to work, take care of my son, visit Helena, do all these things all at once for months, right? Almost a year of actually, it was just constant. And so it was the people that that were regularly sending food consistently. It was the people that were regularly checking in, the people that were regularly visiting. By regularly, I don't mean it was even people that stick in my mind aren't even it wasn't weekly. There's they knew that I was still going through it, and they stuck with it. Because these crises are not it wasn't a temporary thing. It was a marathon, right? And so I think that's kind of true for something like this too, right? Right now the fires are blazing, right? It's we're all aware, we feel the smoke, but what's gonna happen when the fires are done and the air is clear and it's rained, and for us that haven't been directly affected by the fire, we're gonna go back to our life, and school and work has started again, and you're breathing clean air and everything's fine. But for the people that actually don't have their home, or for the people who have family members that have lost their home, the fire hasn't ended, right? And it won't for a while, right? And so I think that the people that really that brought God to me, I think, were the people that remembered that the suffering continued, and they stuck with it. Didn't didn't just kind of satisfy their own, like, oh, I feel better because I checked in with Mina, but they actually like built a relationship with me through it. And I think that's really like what God does, is he sticks with us through the suffering. It's not like I'm like a Band-Aid, like I'm sorry you feel bad, but it's like it's a joining in and a walking along the path, because this kind of suffering, these kind of crises are kind of a marathon. So that's my personal example. Can I do another shameless begging for someone to share like any examples that they might have or willing to share with the group of, yeah. Cassie. Thank you.
So 3 months ago, my dad died, and I think it was, he was sick for a while, so we knew it was coming, but it nonetheless felt like a shock, because you're never prepared for the day it happens. And I remember coming back to the United States, and it felt easy to kind of put it into a bubble and compartmentalize, because it was a different country. It's a whole new thing now, it's entering real life again, where I have to work and I have all these responsibilities. And I remember, just like you said, at the beginning there was a ton of support and an outpouring of love. But I remember that I was so hesitant to talk about it with people for a myriad of reasons. But I think one of the biggest things is that even with my closest friends, I didn't want to let my suffering be their suffering. And I remember that there's a one or two very good friends I have that really saw that and knew that in me, and kind of dismissed that and just said, no, we're not doing this, we're not brushing it off, we're here to really just let you be safe around us and be able to open up and sit in your grief, and we're not going to be scared about that, we're not going to be off-put about that, we're not going to find it uncomfortable, we're here to really bear it with you. And so I think it's kind of a different side of persistence in that, it's they really made it safe for me to sit in my grief.
Thank you for sharing. That's such a beautiful, that's so beautiful, Kathy. Thank you. I think that to be able to create a relationship where it's safe for someone to sit in their grief means that I think you have to be able to learn how to read the other person's emotion when they're not able to tell you what it is. I think I'm this way as well, where I'm not very good about like letting people know that where I'm at. I'm in mental health, and I'm not great about talking my emotions, right? I'm very good at making people talk about their emotions. I can read emotions pretty well, but I'm not great about sharing my own. And so the people that have created a safe space have learned to read me without me sharing it to do that. So I think in order to do that, you have to be able to pay attention to kind of like the body language of the person, the micro expressions of a person, and also you have to be willing to ask, hey, how are you doing? And then when they give you an answer, you validate that and say like, totally fair. I want to let you know that I also, even if you are having a really hard time, I'm here for you. And if you're willing to talk about it, I would be honored, right? So to kind of like verbally express, hey, I'm willing to get down and dirty with the emotions, right? I want to be a safe space, even if I don't know exactly what you're going through. I want to know exactly what you're going through, and to kind of express that from your like body language, but also to verbally say that, I think is a really not easy thing to do, but I think a really important thing that we can do in our friendships as we deepen them and as we learn how to deepen them. So I love that you have friends that did that, and I love that you were willing to kind of be more vulnerable. I think God is in those kinds of friendships. I think that that's really important, in my opinion. Thank you, Cass. Anyone else willing to kind of, yeah. Thank you. This front row is rocking it, so you guys got to step up, all right?
When I was in middle school, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and we didn't know at the time. As little kids, my parents hid it from us. And my family, I have family in England. They flew all the way here to the U.S. To support us during the summer, and it was just very nice of them. They took us, like to Disneyland and Universal Studios, so we won't
take you
feel,
out,
so we won't feel, anything changing. And so how I actually knew that my mom was diagnosed was actually through middle school, because I used to skip my English class because I didn't like my teacher a lot. So I used to go to the nurse's office a lot. And so the doctor told me over there that my mom was actually diagnosed with cancer, and I was like, so I won't go to the
That's such
nurse's
a hard way
office.
to
So so I didn't go ever since then to the nurse's office.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And I think that's an example, if you allow me to say, I think that's an example of how we can cause harm by not being brave enough to face the emotions head on, right? I think that naturally with hard emotions, we all want to avoid, right? It's natural. It's uncomfortable, so why deal with the discomfort? It's like, if something's hot, why am I going to get close to it and touch it? But the thing about emotions is that when we avoid them, and when we avoid facing them when they're hard with each other, the only thing that does is it creates disconnection, mistrust in relationship, and it can make you feel very alone, right? So I don't want to speak for you. I don't know what that was like for you. I can only imagine if that was me and I found out that way, I imagine that wouldn't be a very pleasant experience. Or very confusing, right?
Honestly, I was mad from the doctor because
he had the audacity
to tell me, because she was so tired of seeing me every day, having an excuse to go to the nurse's office, during English class. So she was so tired of seeing me, so she had to tell me something to stop going. So
that's kind of ridiculous. What's this doctor's name? I want a word. Yeah, my gosh. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? It doesn't have to be a personal loss or anything, yeah.
This is kind of hard for me to talk about, but I will mention it. I'm a cancer survivor myself.
Good on you.
Some people know that, some people don't know that. Preface, I'm fine now.
Thanks for sharing.
I want everyone to know that. I think you said something really interesting that kind of stuck out to me, how it kind of you see God in those moments. And I think for me, it was an interesting feeling as far as my needs went, aside from the health issues and chemo and all that stuff. It was hard. It was a really weird feeling, because it was kind of one of those things where I didn't really want a lot of people to know about it. Yeah. And I think something
Why do you think that is? Why do you think you didn't want
I really struggled with the sense of people looking at me and just feeling this sense of, and it's not their fault. I mean, it really isn't their fault. If I'm being honest and objective about it, I get it. I'd be in the same position, but
most of us don't really know how to interact with people.
It was just kind of the pity in their eyes,
Right.
It's like they're looking at a dying kid, and that really bothered me.
Sure.
A lot. With that being said, I was just really lucky in the sense of I had a lot of unconditional love around me.
Yeah.
I think that's a big reason why I made it through. It was kind of a rough go without going into too much detail, but.
And please don't go into detail, but can
Yeah.
I ask,
Yeah,
what was the expression of love that has stuck with you, or do you feel that was the most
my
meaningful
goodness.
to you? What kinds of things were people doing that?
So a good example would be my aunt, right? She lives in Boston.
Yeah.
I mean, she literally dropped she's a doctor there. She just dropped what she was doing and she flew across the country and she spent a month with me.
Amazing.
And I think what I really appreciated her approach was, there was never a sense of that pity was not there. It was always just very she talked straight to me. There was a lot of tenderness and care there, but it was also this is what I think you should do, this is what you should do. And it felt good, because I didn't feel like anyone was there was a gentleness there without coddling, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really appreciated, because it helped me gain some semblance of normalcy, because I'm a pretty independent person. I really don't like asking for help.
Sure.
And I was in a situation where, at 24, I felt like I devolved into like a toddler. I could barely get up to walk to the bathroom, you know.
You're
Like
so vulnerable.
no, it was the most vulnerable I've been in a long time. And it was just one of those things where it's like you really realize the people who love you and like what they're willing to do for you. And so when you talk about, you know, seeing God in these low moments, it's true. Like you see God's unconditional love in the people that love you, you
Yes.
know? And that's something I took away from it. And I don't know, I don't know if there's anything specific anybody could do to make me feel better in the moment, but that was one of the few comforts I had going through it, you know. And thank God it's been years, I'm good now. But yeah, it's something that still sticks out to me to this day. It's just kind of like that unconditional love I experienced. I feel like it's rare. I don't feel like a lot of people get to see that, and I feel like it was a blessing in that sense.
I love that you see it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a blessing. And thank God for your health.
Thanks.
Now, yeah. You know, you brought up a point about like, you know, people having pity in their eyes. And one thing I've learned is that it's both a very fine line and also a very big difference between pity and compassion, right? People generally, when you're going through that kind of thing, pity is one of the most frustrating experiences. Like, no one wants to be looked down on. No one wants to feel, there's a word I'm looking for. Yeah, yeah, you want to feel understood without feeling like belittled, or, and I think that to have compassion is actually to match, to join, not to, oh, poor little, you know, like, you know, how sad that you're going through this kind of thing, but it's to actually like to join in and to feel with and to experience with. So it's a fine line and also a really big difference. Thank you for sharing that. Can I just check in? Are we feeling like this is kind of worthwhile, helpful? Should we keep doing this, or should we move on from this? Let's see if anyone else is willing to kind of share a little bit. Anyone else? Thanks, Van.
I'll keep this quick. One of my best friends from high school, we had a fallout to the point where I didn't even go to his wedding. But shortly after his wedding, his dad passed away. So I just went to, at the point, kan Geneza fil-Gema. I just went and just sat next to him and we cried. And after that, we still never spoke again. I just attended that and we cried together and just stayed with him for the day and left, and we still never kept in touch after that.
Yeah. Yeah, but there was still part of you that wanted to connect with him and kind of just be there for him. Yeah,
yeah, in a sense of, how I perceive it is true friendships, or someone who's actually compassionate is someone who's with you in the low, not the highs. The highs, everyone will cheer for you, but not everyone will stand next to you in your, like a low situation.
I'd like to build on that. I think that's really important. I'd like to build on that in the sense that grief is often, for a lot of people, it is a roller coaster, right? So grief isn't always this kind of persistent sadness, isn't this always black. It can look like, it can have moments of anger and confusion, even like, sometimes people that are grieving really find themselves needing, like, not avoiding, but needing a little bit of distraction, needing to be with someone that's just gonna like, just have fun with them a little bit, just be taken out and like, go watch a movie and just like, just do something else that isn't think about, you know, the crisis or their loss, right? So that there's nothing wrong with that, and there is also usually a time for this, like crying together and sitting in silence or talking or whatever it is. So I think the key in emotionally connecting with people who are in crisis is, one, see if you can sense what is the need right now and be open that the need could be anything. It could be we need to cry, we need to talk, we need to do nothing, we need to go out and play, we need to do an errand. It could be anything. So I'd say approach it with, I want to do whatever their need is. See if you can sense it. If you can't, I always, with humility, will say, I'm not really sure what you need right now. It might be that you don't either really know what you need right now. Is it okay if we talk about it so I can see how I can be the most helpful? So, we want to ask that, if I can't sense what the need is, you want to ask what the need is with the humility and with the caveat of, you might not even know, so maybe we can figure it out together if you're willing, kind of thing. Because a lot of us in our grieving moments are like, I just feel really, really bad. I don't know what I need. I just need it to end, but I don't know what it is, right? I just feel not good. And so sometimes just having someone willing to kind of help me figure out, okay, what I really need right now is a really good nap, and I need someone to take care of some of the things, and I just need to sleep for an hour and have someone take care of my kid and not worry about cleaning the dishes and taking care of my wife, and I just need to be able to sleep for an hour. So having someone to help me figure out that's what I needed, and then help me do it, man, what an act of service and love that is, right? So that's a real example of something I needed at one time. Yeah. Anyone else want to share about experiences they've had of either themselves or people they care about being in crisis, and what it was like to try to support and love them? Yeah, please do.
Well, that's my great-grandpa. Before he died, he had heart problems due to when the stock market was hit in Egypt at the time, and he lost so much. So his heart had so many problems, and the doctor said that he cannot drink coffee at all, and one of his daughters. He cannot live without drinking Turkish coffee every day. Sure. So one of his daughters used to sneak into the kitchen and make him some coffee every day because he had to drink it, and he was that was his last days. So she was so sad for him, and she loved her dad. So that was his last wish.
Wanted to do something special for
yeah.
him. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so she recognized that this is a need, right? And those might seem like simple things, man, they can be really meaningful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone making a cup of coffee or a cup of tea there's something about a hot drink, I actually have learned in my practice to offer someone a drink in my psychiatric practice has made a world of difference. I now have bottles of water and I have a tea kettle that I have in my office. And I've just learned that offering, even if they don't take me up on that offer, something to drink, hey, I know you're here to talk about what's going on and we're gonna talk about the hard things, but also let me see if I can help with this simple need of your thirst, right? Or just, can be really, it's really changed how I can connect with people, just offering something to drink in my office. So anyway, yeah, Mark, please.
For those of us who are trying to help people in distress from a distance, right? So you have a distant friend, someone's going through something kind of similar to what's going on right now in LA. I know of a lot of people that live in the area that's being affected, and I haven't seen them or heard from them in a while. We haven't communicated. But I want to let them know that I'm thinking about them, and I want to offer my help. And so you told me to avoid saying, let me know if you need anything, which is exactly what I've been doing the entire time.
That's what most of us do, yeah.
So, what's the other, give us some examples of way to reach out to people who you might not have heard of or heard from for a while, but you want to lend your help, and you want it to be sincere. You don't want it to just be another text in their phone.
Yeah. Definitely. So, okay. I'd like this to be a brainstorm. So if anyone has ideas, I'll share some of my thoughts, but like, let me tell you, I'm not an expert here. So like, if you guys have ideas, please let's together figure it out. But some of the things that came to my mind with that question, first is, when you're asking, let me know if you need anything, I think it's possible to still offer like specific needs. So I'll give you an example with me. I have a friend that lives in Arizona, and for an entire year, after my wife was diagnosed, this friend every Wednesday would DoorDash some food to us. For an entire year, every Wednesday. I knew every Wednesday I didn't have to cook because, and actually, like, it was too long. I was like, you can stop now, like, and the friend was like, no, I'm good. Like, I really like doing this. So, and the reason why the friend started is because, like, initially, I had shared that, like, it's really been hard to like cook right now. I just don't have, and like, we can't always eat out. Like, it's just, and that kind of thing. That friend heard me and like just made this commitment and decided from a distance. They live in a different state, right? So the point being is, even from a distance, you can figure out creative solutions, I think, to provide specific needs. And I think one of the specific needs that can be really effective is that, would it be helpful to have some regular check-in or a chat, right? So yeah, you can't necessarily help them lift heavy things or help them move objects or whatever, but like, you can still be, with the blessing of technology now, you can still be very present, in a regular way, right? I would recommend, this is my 2 cents, because I'm a big believer in when you're doing emotional connection, for it to have visual and auditory senses engaged. I'm a big believer in that because of body language and emotional expression, that you do FaceTime or something like that. And there's going to be a time for texts and phone calls, but if you're really trying to like give them a space to connect, see each other, or at least offer that as an option, or encourage that, because I think that really makes it a world of difference. In one of the clinics I work with, it's with foster kids, and during COVID, I noticed that my ability to work with the foster kids and their families was just so hard. And with other patients, it was just, I could make it work with Zoom and everything, but with kind of more vulnerable populations, I needed them to be in the office. And so I actually, with that clinic, I've set my foot down. I was like, I do not do telehealth with that. That is only in person, because I can't, it's not effective, without that, like, the connection more than just verbal connection, right? That's just my experience and my 2 cents about that. But what are other people's wisdom about, or ideas of how can we support people when it's from a distance, when you're not able to like live close by? Or yeah. Sharing what? Sharing knowledge. Yeah, good.
Usually I just share data if I can provide it. Like, for example, one time my friend got sick with, I don't remember the signal something.
Sure.
So I kept researching on that specific disease, and I kept giving information that I know that is like from like right sources.
Yeah.
Same thing with what's happening right now. I keep checking like located, telling them like the closest, like, hey, you're in like a yellow zone now. Are you aware of this? Are you aware of that? Sharing these kind of infos with them, even though they're the same district as me.
Yeah.
It shows that, at least for me, it feels like it's showing that I'm thinking of them while not necessarily telling them that, like, because I'm looking up their stuff for them.
Yeah, that gift that you're sharing reminds me a lot about my wife. One of her like strengths, in my opinion, is she's so good at like networking and thinking about like, oh, someone seems to have like, like talking about, oh, they have this rash, and she's immediately like, I have 3 dermatologists on my phone that I would recommend, and she's always thinking about connecting, a specific need. The one thing I would just like encourage, as you're sharing knowledge and thinking about connecting resources, I think it's always worthwhile to check in to make sure that that's helpful. The only reason why is kind of the point you made, is that sometimes there's, in my humble opinion, sometimes people are in a place where they don't want the solutions. And I see this with the work my wife does, and I think we complement each other with that, because I'm terrible at thinking about resources. This is just not the way my brain works. But I'm pretty decent at emotional connection and like just, for a living, I listen. So I think we work together well with that. And sometimes we're like, we both like, okay, Helena, this is your turn. Like, you go. Like, what they need is solutions. They need resources. They need information. And sometimes it's like, Mina, you step in. Like, what they need is not solutions. What they need is like, just someone who's gonna like shut their mouth, actually, which is not her strength. Shut her mouth and just like listen for a little bit. So she would know why I say that. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, I think that's really an awesome thing we can provide too. Any other things people want to share? So yeah, please, man.
This is kind of simple, but just grabbing the phone and just calling somebody, even if it's
Yes.
like random or it's been like 6 months, a year, whatever, just grab the phone and say, hey, how's it going? How you doing? Was thinking about you. Are you okay with the fires? Just like a random old school phone call, I think, is the right
Yeah,
route.
and you don't have to have like anything other than, hey, I was just thinking about you. And it can start there, right? Like, to be thought of, right, when there's so many other things going on is so meaningful, right? Like, if someone just called me and said, they're thinking about me, like that on its own, without any other need met, can be really powerful, right? So yeah, and like, it seems like it's hard, but really that conversation can take 2, 3, 4 minutes. That can be done when you're walking from one place to another. That can be done when you're, folding your laundry. That can be done while you're waiting for the tomato sauce to simmer. That can be done like, while you're doing any of those things, right? Like you can do that like, hey, I'm just thinking about you phone call. So I love that idea. I'm wondering if we can kind of start wrapping up and pivot to if anyone wants to talk about, what's going on right now. So I think we've stayed very general, maybe talking about the past and our own personal experiences, but this specific crisis with the fires, do we know anybody, first, if anyone is willing to share, kind of how it's impacting them and wants to kind of reach out to this family for support and we can, acknowledge that, or if there's people that we know of that we can think of loving and supporting, or people that, you're aware of, and we can brainstorm how to do that together. So who's impacted by this current crisis or knows people that are impacted by this current crisis and wants to share about it? Yeah.
I do have a couple of friends that I'm aware is impacted personally by this crisis, and I've shared that, of course, my home is welcome to them. Of course, my parents' home is welcome to them. We have resources if they need food, water. You can park your car here. There's also a listing of evacuation centers that are free at the moment to help bring those people in, and I've sent those listings out. So if anyone wants the listing of evacuation centers, I can airdrop it to them right now.
Yeah, and so I love that. So you're doing that resource connection.
I think
Perfect.
for me, that's what I've noticed is
Yeah.
at this moment more crucial than any.
Than the emotional stuff.
Exactly.
Of course. And that's kind of based on like if you've ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So like great to feel like loved and supported, but if you don't have like shelter or food or water, right, clean water, then like those things are less relevant because you're not going to be alive to be emotionally supported, right? So like we have to think about like what are the current needs, and if it is more kind of like just that basic needs, we need to support people in that first, and then the next step would be that emotional, loving kind of connection support. So yeah, that's why I actually think of my work, the best work we can do in mental health is when then there's a team of people that think about all of those needs. So like I work for the county, we have people that are specialized in helping people who are unhoused find housing and get Section 8 and all that stuff. And honestly, like, what is the point of me prescribing medication or doing therapy if they like are still on this, like, not getting their needs met, right? So we have to be able to provide for all of those needs first, right? In the order of what's most relevant in the moment. So, yeah. Anyone else with regards to this current crisis? Yeah. Sure.
I don't. I guess. Okay. It's more of a question. So I think something about this is like I kind of like try to approach it from like an empathy aspect of it. And I do have some people I know, even in our church community, who've lost their homes.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of put myself, I try to imagine putting myself in their shoes, and just the thought of it makes me overwhelmed, personally.
Yes.
It's overwhelming, just the
Glad
idea
you're
of
bringing up this point. Yes.
No, it's really overwhelming.
Yes,
you know what I
it is.
mean? So it's almost kind of just like, God forbid if that ever happened to me, like I lost my home, I don't even know where I would begin. When you just think about that, like you're homeless now, essentially, right? So I don't even know, like, and this is like, I know this is the question you posed to us, but it's almost like, what's even a starting point where you can start to even kind of try to give concrete support to someone like that? Because that is it's hard for me to even process it, just imagining. You know, I don't know if there's like something in clinical studies or there's an actual like game plan for it, but it almost feels like if I want to reach out and offer something, I almost feel like it's always going to fall short because I don't know what I can truly do. And that doesn't mean I put my hands up in the air and not do anything, but it's really just like, how do I even approach that situation, really?
I'm so glad you break that up. So I think there's a couple levels to that. First is when we're in this kind of situation, it's really natural for us to have our own emotions and feelings, our own feelings of helplessness. Again, emotions are contagious. So like sometimes just like being with someone who's feeling helpless, you'll start to feel that way, right? Mm-hmm. So, okay, so first it's natural. Second, I think it's really worth taking stock of so you want to take the time to name, and because to name it is to tame it, as I say, the emotion that you're feeling, okay? Now, our job isn't to bring it to them. We're not there to like put it back on them, but to name it so that you're not doing that, right? So that you can kind of have some understanding and regulation. The other reason why that's important is that then when you recognize that you are feeling kind of overwhelmed, unclear about how to help, then you take that and you turn it into a posture of curiosity. Okay. Then it's kind of like, hey, this is kind of something that I don't really know what to deal with, and I want to understand what's going on for you. What are your needs? And maybe we can figure out like next steps together based on what your experiences and what your feelings are. So then you're kind of, not you're putting it back on them, but you're approaching it with like really trying to understand it. So like, instead of just assuming that there is a correct way, you're like, I don't know the way. Right. Give me some like, you're asking the questions so they can start giving you the ideas of how to help them. So I think that like, we're not here, we don't want to approach this as a savior complex. You're not there to rescue or save them. You're there to listen, understand, and then make a space for them to guide you into like how to help them if they want you to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I actually, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Hey, man.
like needed access to like bikes and e-bikes to be able to make it back to their houses because like
Yeah.
they evacuated quickly and then want to go back and check it out, but cars are like blocked off.
Right.
And so like
There was
maybe
no
just
other
offering
way.
a bike or like an e-bike so you can make it back might be practical to some people.
That's a great idea. Yeah. And again, I think it comes back to like, hey, what is the need you have? And like, we might assume, oh, the need you have is housing. But they might say like, oh no, what I need is transportation, right? Like, we can't assume that we know the need, right? And so we have to approach it with this curiosity. And when you're feeling helpless, I think the temptation is either to throw that helplessness back on someone or to withdraw. I feel helpless, so this is too much, I can't help. So instead, ask God for help. Like, I'm feeling helpless, I'm feeling vulnerable, I'm out of my element. God, can you give me strength? Can you give me wisdom? Can you be the help that I can't be on my own? And then turn that helplessness into the curiosity instead of withdrawing and avoiding. So that's my challenge for you, and don't throw it back on them. Don't go farther away, but turn to God instead. Take God's strength and with curiosity say, I'm actually feeling kind of helpless like you, but I'm not gonna push away from you. I'm going to engage with you and figure it out. What's the next step here? And that might be e-bikes, even though you had no idea that was the first, that might be what they need, right? Any other questions, thoughts, comments, things on your heart? Yeah.
So, thank you. A lot of people in my family, when they go into crisis mode, they go in their own cocoon and not
Shut
want
down.
to, and not
Yeah.
want to talk about it at all. And I'm the type of person who likes to talk about things, and I feel much better after talking about it. So I feel like the obligation sometimes to like get it out of them. And I don't know if that's like a good trait or not, but I feel like after they talk about it, after they finally open up after a lot of trials, they also feel good afterwards. And in a way, I was thinking about it, am I doing the right thing or not? But I also read something online that said that if we don't open up to our loved ones, we kind of deprive them of the opportunity to show their love language to us and like that they're there for us. So that's like where I'm getting this from, but I would love to hear your opinion about like kind of like almost forcing your loved one
What
to
do you do
talk
when
about
someone shuts down? What do you do when someone shuts down, right? And how do you respect that, but also say, hey, I'm here. So this is my opinion and kind of what I've settled on as kind of what works for me at least, is I do my best to gently name, hey, I understand kind of you're going through a hard thing, and my sense is that, you're not really wanting to talk about it. It's really understandable. So then what I'm doing there is I'm validating that like, it's an understandable reaction. A lot of us just, we cocoon, we shut down like you're saying. So I validate that. And then I would say, I don't see it as my job is to push. I just want you to know I really care about you, and I really want to support there and be there for you. And I know that it might feel pushy. I'm wondering if you would give me permission to check in with you again in so-so time. So what you're doing is you're saying, I'm respecting your boundary and your space, but I'm not going to let it sit there because I care. And so the majority of the time, people will say, yeah, okay, fine, go ahead and ask about me again, right? That's fine. But and then sometimes people will be like, okay, fine, like the way that you're approaching is because you're understanding where I'm coming from, that on its own is enough to kind of like let you in. But sometimes just that kind of like, okay, I get that you need your bubble. I see your bubble, and can I poke it again in 6 hours, right? That's what you're doing, is you're like, okay, I respect the bubble, but I'm not going anywhere, right? If that makes sense. So that's kind of the approach I found, at least with the shutdowners in my life, which there are many. that tends to work. Yeah. 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 Spiraling. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll repeat the question for the live stream. So what do you do with folks that are actively panicking, or how do you approach that, engage with them? So I always say, regardless of the emotion, start with validating. So start with trying to name what you're seeing, if you can, and acknowledge that, like, it is understandable. It might not be the way you do it, but like it is a reaction that is human for, you know, the crisis and for the grief and the loss. So first you start with the validating, and then what you're doing is you're asking again. I always like to frame it as a question with as much curiosity as I can manage, rather than like a command, a suggestion, or a solution. It's always like a kind of an invitation. So it's like a, hey, you know, I noticed that, you know, it's understandable that we're kind of spiraling. There's so much anxiety and we're panicking here. Would it be okay if we figure out ways to kind of turn down the heat on that level of anxiety and kind of figure out ways to panic? Would it be okay if I offer up some ideas and suggestions? They might say no. If they say no, then you could say, okay, then is it okay if I just stay with you here as you're feeling what you're feeling, and then we can see again in a little bit what you need. And if they say, yeah, I just need this to end, like, I can't stop thinking about this, and like, I'm worried, I don't know where I'm gonna go or what I'm gonna do, and like, we're like, okay, that's totally fair. And then you might think of, like, you know, things that work for you when you're panicking, you know, so there's a range of tools that people can use or suggest. They range from, like, you know, prayer to meditation to deep breathing to muscle relaxation to distraction to a sensory experience. So like some people will you turn to music, or smell is really powerful for certain people, or pictures of their favorite, or like their favorite TV show, so like visual distractions. So you're thinking about, like, you might offer any of those things. If you know what works for them, you might go straight to that. Physical touch, maybe they just need like a hand held or an arm around them, or you know, this is especially true for for folks, for kids actually. A lot of them really just need that kind of like pressure. And that proprioceptive sense is that kind of that like awareness of their body and someone else's body next to them. So you're kind of just like, you might, I mean, this is what I do, is I kind of list ideas if I don't know, and then see what kind of might work for them. And this is, again, only if they are agreeable at that moment to kind of like work with you to kind of see how do you manage that panic. Yeah. And it can be, let me just tell you, as someone who has witnessed and sat with people through so many panic attacks in my life, it is very hard, because it is so hard not to panic yourself, right? As someone that cares about that person and wants good for them, you immediately, at least for me, people usually have two reactions. They either start to initially really panic, or some people get really like stop it, like, this is ridiculous, like, I can't handle this right now, and they like approach it with anger or avoidance, right? And so I think that, like, we recognize that these are natural reactions, recognize what you're doing, and then if you have the presence of mind to keep the calm, then you can kind of, if you know, do the next step of asking, you know, what are you willing to kind of come up with solutions for me? So this happens like with my son a lot. You know, again, he's 8. He'll have a kind of like tantrum, panic episode, and what I've learned to do is I ask him, hey, you know, are we in a place where you need me to kind of come up with ideas with you and to support you, or do you need me to just be here and wait a little bit? And you know, sometimes he's able to tell me what he needs. Sometimes he just continues to get mad, and that tells me, okay, he's not ready yet, and so I just wait a little bit longer and just be there. So, any other thoughts? Yeah, man.
Oh, I wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
This is like kind of unrelated, but
Everything's related.
yeah, well, when they mentioned like extreme, like anger, it reminded me of the opposite extreme. Like I've been in a couple situations in my life where somebody you're very close to, usually it's like they're going through a really, really tough time, and then like they're almost like embarrassed, but they'll start alluding like, hey, I'm having these like thoughts that I'm a little ashamed of, like,
Yeah.
you know, is life worth it anymore? And like they'll kind of say it like very subtly, like they're not actually actively trying to plan something, but like you can tell they're like really, really suffering. And so like, what is the playbook to respond at that time? Like saying, hey, I'm so sorry you're feeling this way, like just doesn't feel.
Do we
I don't
have
know,
another
like,
3
what do you
hours?
do?
Oh my
Like, what are
God,
the-
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, what a good question. Yeah, so that's like literally all the training I've done is like about that thing. And so let me just kind of clarify, is what you're talking about kind of more the darker thoughts, like kind of thoughts of like not wanting to live or thoughts
Exactly.
of suicide?
Yeah, like they're basically alluding like, hey, I'm suicidal without saying it. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah. So number one recommendation for that is don't panic. And don't, so it can be very scary for a lot of us to hear. I hear it every day of my life, so it doesn't, like, I'm a little bit more like accustomed to it. But for a lot of us, we're not used to people saying, like, hey, like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I think I just want to like not wake up, right? Like a lot of us don't, like that can be a very overwhelming thing for someone they care about to say, right? So first, take a deep breath, and one of the most effective things you can do is react really strongly. So take a second if you need to kind of like bring yourself down, and then approach it with validation and curiosity, which is, given what you're going through, like, it sounds like you're feeling really hopeless. I really get it. Of course, I wish and hope for you life and thriving and all of that, but I get that you're feeling just in this really dark place. And then you might ask a little bit more about like how long it's been going on, if they've told anyone about it, and then if you're feeling like there's a safety issue, like there's actually something going on, then we need to make sure that that person is getting help, right? We don't want to just like sit on it. And what I would do in that situation is say, hey, buddy, I'm so grateful that you were like honest and open with me. I gotta tell you, I'm really concerned based on what you're saying that like something really serious could happen. Because I care about you, I'm gonna let you know I have to tell someone to make sure that you're safe and that you get the help that you deserve. So now, if you're not sure, then you can always kind of ask for permission to consult with someone. But if there isn't the safety issue, then you're just kind of like supporting them, right? If they're like, yeah, I wouldn't do it, but like it's just on my mind, then what you're doing is you're just trying to support them. And then, I always recommend, hey, given what you're going through and that you're having these kinds of darker thoughts, have you thought about getting some emotional support for yourself? Like thinking about like, I know it can be really hard and really scary, but you thought about like seeing if we can find you a therapist, and would you be open to that and that kind of thing? So, what do you think about what I said?
Yeah, so what if they're already seeing a therapist?
Yeah, okay, then I would certainly ask, have you been able to tell your therapist about these things?
Sure.
So if they say no, that's really scary.
Yeah.
If they say yes, then you can, and you believe them, then I would shift again. Then you know that it's the therapist is kind of aware, the safety kind of professional thing is being handled because they're in the know, and now your job is to kind of just again validate, be curious, and provide compassion, and then of course, like if you can provide hope, right? Like remind them that they're loved by you and by God. Remind them that they have, if you can, remind them that they have things to live for, and they have like strengths and goals and purpose and all of that. Yeah.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was about to say so.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I mean, that feeling like you don't have purpose is one of the kind of existential things are one of the most common reasons why people kind of fall into suicidal thoughts. Because they're like, what is even the point? I don't even know why I'm here anymore. That sometimes leads people into those kinds of thoughts. So thank you for asking that question. Any other questions? Well, I'm super grateful that you were willing to come up close and engage. I know this is a little bit more of a like personal thing, so I'm just really impressed with all of you and very grateful. And thank God for this opportunity. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mina. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's 8:30 now. Next week we'll be having Monique Jenkins McCarr. We'll be continuing our parable series on the 16th. Right now we have In and Out served in the, I know this is not, maybe it's something like a distraction so we can cheer each other up. I would just add to what Mina said that as a GYP community, if we hear of anything, if like anyone in our community or outside of our community that has a need, please come and let us know. I find that these times bring us closer together. So if there's any friend or family that can use the help of an army of young professionals, we would love to sort of lend our helping hand. So with that, yes, there's going to be, like I said, there's In and Out in the fellowship hall. Everyone wants us to know.
Let's all pray together. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Lord, make us worthy to pray together. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory forever. Amen. Now the love of God the Father, the grace of his only begotten Son, our Lord God and Savior Jesus Christ, communion and gift of the Holy Spirit be with you all. The peace of the Lord be with you.
All of them, huh? What's that? John Paul said Can you take this as well? Can you take it down?
Yeah, yeah.